This is the CineSnob Podcast.
Everyone, welcome to episode 277 of the CineSnob Podcast. I'm Jerrod Kingery.
I'm Cody Villafana.
Cody, we were just talking before the show started about the Astros. Going to the potentially going to the World Series after they're up as we speak Sunday afternoon here, 3-2 over the Rangers.
Mm-hmm.
You went to a couple of games in this division championship.
Yeah,
right?
I went to game 1 of the ALCS last Sunday in Houston. Not a great game to be at. The Astros lost 2-0, so I didn't even get to see them score a run, which makes the whole money and trip seem a little pointless. But you know,
is it?
happens.
I said DS. This is the championship series. Is it really expensive for the championship series?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Have you been to a World Series game before?
No. So I've been to like conference finals in hockey, basketball, and baseball now. So I've gotten that far, but never been to a finals game of any sport.
Yeah, I've been to. I was at a conference finals game. Well, the last one I went to was Spurs Rockets in '95.
Oh wow.
Where Olajuwon handed the team its ass, handed the Spurs its
yes.
ass,
Yep.
and Dennis Rodman essentially quit on the team during that
Mhm.
series. Yeah, that was the last time. I have friends that I know that have been to friends that were at the 2014 clinching game for the Spurs in the finals.
Mm-hmm.
I've just never had it's just but always been, well, for that time I was working covering the games, but it's just never been in the cards financially. I remember when the Astros went to the World Series, I think in the early 2000s.
It would have been 2005, I believe.
Yeah, I looked at tickets for that and it was astronomically expensive. So I can
Yeah.
only imagine what it would cost nearly 20 years later.
Yeah, and no, it's stupid. I mean, and even when you buy directly from the team and pay like face value, it's stupid.
And yeah, and it's the weird part is, like, isn't it still just another, like, just a normal baseball game? Like,
Mhm.
the intensity is not driven up, right? Like,
It-
I don't know.
You don't really feel it until it gets into like the guts of the game, if it's even close. Like if it's a blowout or whatever, it's just another game. Like
Yeah.
there's not that same kind of electricity that you have in like, you know, like a basketball game where if it's like super close or down to the wire or, you know,
Yeah, you can
back and
feel
forth,
it.
momentum
Yeah.
shift. Yeah.
Yeah, and like you can feel like the switches that have come in, and
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. Baseball just doesn't strike me as that kind of thing that would have that electricity.
Mm-hmm. That's fair.
And and then you're still buying a fucking hot dog, and I
Yeah.
guess the only difference is it might be a little bit colder than normal.
Yeah, that's fair.
Good luck to the Astros, I guess, or the Rangers. I don't, whoever you're rooting for. I don't have a team in
That's
this
fair.
race, but we're past the cheating days of the Astros, so you can't really hold that against them anymore.
Not this team. There's only 2 position players remaining and 1 pitcher who was, you know, it wasn't about the pitchers. So, in like different management, different GM, different coaching staff, different everything. So, yeah.
You still got that 2017 hat though, right? Still hold on to it tightly, or
Oh, of course. Yeah.
that's the first title, even though it's got a massive black mark.
Yeah. I mean, getting one last year kind of helped have a clean one pretty relatively quickly. So it's fine.
Yeah. So moving on, Austin Film Fest is coming up. Austin Film Festival is coming up, Cody.
Mm-hmm.
It's been a few years, I know, since you attended, and
Yeah.
you're finally going back.
Yeah, I'm going back this year, and yeah, it's been. I think the last time I went to Austin Film Festival was like 2015 or 16 or something like that.
That long ago.
Yeah, so it's been a while, and you know, but interestingly, it was the first film festival I ever went to back in 2011, and I had a really great time, and a lot of great stuff came from that. You know, I saw because of when it happens, which is like late October, you get like an early jump on like awards season stuff. So I remember I watched like The Artist at the Paramount Theater that first year, which was super cool. I saw Alexander Payne's The Descendants at that film festival.
Oh yeah.
I saw that first revival of Beavis and Butthead at that festival. The one where they were basically doing MTV shows.
Oh yeah, it was it was all 4x3. I remember.
Yeah.
Used animation from them on the couch.
Yes. Yep, that was it.
Okay.
And so and I saw a bunch of other stuff there. I think I saw I'm trying to remember, but like the interesting hook about Austin Film Festival, I don't know if you know this about it, but it's intended to put the focus on screenwriters. So it's like a screenwriting festival.
Oh,
so,
I've considered entering it many times.
Yeah, because there's a full contest and you can do like spec scripts, and you can
There's
submit
like pilots. Yeah.
You could submit episodes of like existing TV shows and stuff like that. But it's cool because they have a lot of really great panels. And I remember a panel I went to that first year. I went to a Damon Lindelof panel.
Oh boy!
But if you think about it, so it was the perfect time to be at a Damon Lindelof panel because it was 2011. Lost ended in 2010. Prometheus is in 2012. So it was like. So it was like right wedged in between where like, yes, there was a little bit of some shakiness about how Lost ended, but it hadn't hit that sort of like Tomorrowland and Prometheus time. And then it was also pre like gaining everything back with like the leftovers and in Watchmen and stuff.
Looking this up, that would have been post Cowboys and Aliens too, which was a terrible Lindelof.
That's true.
Piece of shit.
Yeah. And so, but I remember the panel being really interesting. You know, I was, whatever you have to say about that last season of Lost. He also wrote, some of the best episodes of TV that had been to that point. I believe he wrote that one, my favorite episode, which I think is one of the best episodes of TV ever.
Was it the Damon? I'm sorry, the Desmond episode.
Yes, it's the Desmond episode.
I can't remember what it's called.
Yeah, I always forget. The Constant.
There you go.
Where it's like time travel mixed in with like it could totally stand on its own as its own thing, and and I believe that Lindelof, if I'm not mistaken, wrote that episode, and so interestingly, Damon Lindelof is going to have a panel at this year's festival, and there's a lot of great panels too. I mean, I was looking through the list, and some stuff I would be looking forward to are like. If you're into TV, there's like a panel with Joanna Callow, who's like a writer for The Bear. There's one with Dan Gore, who was like the creator of Brooklyn Nine-Nine. He was a writer on Parks and Rec. There's a panel with Celine Song, who was the writer-director of Past Lives, my favorite movie of the year so far.
Oh,
and then
cool.
when people are having movies at the festival, they'll also stop and do a panel. So like Emerald Fennell is doing a panel as well, and Saltburn is going to be at playing at the festival itself. So there's lots of great panels where you can kind of get some ins and outs of screenwriting. They also do this interesting stuff where they do retrospective screenings that are like presented by people. So two that caught my eye are they're doing an Iron Man 3 screening with Shane Black in attendance. And then they're doing a screening of Aliens with Noah Hawley in attendance because he has a FX Alien show on the horizon.
Oh, I didn't realize that.
Yeah.
What was wasn't there an alien story this week that Ridley Scott saw something?
Yeah, he saw the Fede Alvarez.
Oh, the movie. That's right.
Yeah. I'm not sure when that Noah Hawley Aliens movies or Aliens TV show is coming, but it is a prequel to Alien, I believe.
Aren't they all?
Yeah.
I think everything is.
Yeah. So those are cool things. And then just kind of like movies, like I said, it has like, because it's in festival it's in award season, they get the jump on a lot of festival movies. So like, or awards movies like Saltburn, which I saw is like their centerpiece movie. There's some movies that had some really good traction at other festivals, like The Holdovers, which is the new Alexander Payne movie. That's apparently like his best work in a really long time, which is nice because I want to say his last movie was Downsizing, wasn't it?
I was just thinking about that. I remember really hating Downsizing.
Yeah, Downsizing is a really terrible movie.
Well, it was like a great like concept. And then had like the worst execution. I think the best joke in it at the very end is when they blow up the mine.
Oh yeah,
or the mine shaft. Anyway, it's a very interesting trailer anyway.
Yeah, and that was his last movie, so I've heard it's a good bounce back from that. And then also there's going to be a screening of a movie called American Fiction that has a lot of great awards buzz. And then there's stuff that's really interesting, and I don't even know if this is going to still happen, but there's the new movie from Jeff Nichols called The Bike Riders that actually just this past week got pushed indefinitely due to the actors' strike, but it's still on the schedule for the festival. So, it may be a chance to see that movie way in advance, presuming that it still plays at the festival. And then, of course, there's a lot of small competition films, and Austin Film Festival is the festival where I saw the movie Saronia, which was a movie that we ended up hosting screenings of and bringing it to San Antonio for a Q&A and a concert and stuff. So, we have deep roots. I remember the first year I saw Shame at Austin Film Festival and everything that entailed that movie. And so, yeah, it's
Fassbender's Wang, I think is
yes,
the thing that I take away from that movie.
Yeah. That is part of it. That's the one thing you remember. It's a great movie, but that's
it sticks in my mind for some reason.
Of course, yeah. So again, I'm glad to be back at the festival. Hope to check out some of the big movies and of course some of the smaller competition stuff and see what kind of small gems are there, and then hopefully check out a panel or two. Especially because I do think for me personally, I love screenwriting and good scripts and good dialogue and putting the focus on the thing that I look for the most when I'm watching a movie is pretty interesting. So looking forward to going back to Austin and spending some time there.
Yeah, I attended briefly one panel, I think in like 2004 or 5. I know I've talked about it on the show before, but it was Adam McKay was there, and I think this was like right after, or right before Anchorman was released, and he brought like some he screened a bunch of stuff of Will Ferrell as George W. Bush. It went over really well. I can't remember what the whole panel was about, but
yeah. And the thing about the festival that I have always really appreciated is that it is like the most reasonably priced film festival you will ever find. If you buy a festival a badge early enough, you can get it for $125.
That is really cheap.
Yeah, it's $150 after June 17th, and then like now, if you were to buy it with the festival a few days away, it's $175, and that gets you priority badge line. So you just go to the regular line, and then you also get access to Saturday panels at the conference. And if you just wanted to do like a film pass, which is like the secondary line, it's $80, and so. Nice. It is. I mean, you will not find a festival that is cheaper than that. Like, period. And so it's really cost effective if someone has always wanted to have a festival experience but doesn't want to shell out $1,500 for South by Southwest or whatever. You could see a lot of really great movies for a relatively. I mean, it's like 8 days of films for $150 or $175 right now, which is really really cheap. So
yeah. Cool, and that starts on October 26th and runs through, is it November 2nd?
Yes, October 26th through November 2nd.
Cool. We'll look forward to hearing about that. Anything else before we move on?
No, that's it. Let's get to it.
All right, let's get started on reviews.
Here are this week's reviews.
This week we have Killers of the Flower Moon.
Shows itself to you that Bill Smith didn't take the proper care of Minnie the way he could have. To have her sick and die, take her head rights and her land. That oil, which should go to her sister as your wife, well, he's taking money that by right should go to Molly. The mother, Lizzie.
She's not in good shape.
She won't last. Most Osage don't live past 50. With these women dying, with how Osage suffer from illness, you have to make it the head rights come to you. You see?
This is, of course, the latest film from director Martin Scorsese. with frequent collaborators Leonardo DiCaprio, as you see there, and Robert De Niro. Lily Gladstone, relative newcomer, the other lead role as Molly Burkhart. Anyway, this is another, let's call it, crime epic from Scorsese. Following The Irishman, I think this is actually a little longer than The Irishman, if I'm not mistaken.
I think so.
3.5 hours. It's a lot of the talk that's out there. But anyway, Cody, tell us about Killers of the Flower Moon and what you thought of it.
Yeah, so it's a bit of like a historical drama in that it's sort of it goes through a period of time in like the late 1910s to the early 1930s or something like that.
Roughly, yeah, something like along those lines. I think it's like post World War I is when it starts.
Yeah, and essentially it tells the story of basically the Osage tribe in Oklahoma, and sort of how people, white people in particular, exclusively, were essentially going into those communities and getting close to members of the Osage tribe, and essentially for reasons to kind of inherit their land, their oil money, and did so by developing relationships, marrying within them, and then plotting together to essentially kill members of their family, their spouses, their kids, everyone, in order to get their money, inheritance, and stuff.
The notion is that, well, the reality is that the Osage were given this land as a reservation, and oil was discovered on it, and they became like the richest people per capita in the world.
Right.
So they had white people working for them.
Yes.
And that's kind of the beginning of the animosity.
Yeah, and then historically, just having these mysterious murders and deaths that were happening to people, to the people in their positions of wealth and power, and in this sort of like grand scheme plotted out to do so. And so it tells the story kind of. It is an epic of multiple years spanning, in a way that you and I had talked about, and I think we talk about a lot on this show, about sort of like the passage of time, and years and years and decades maybe even pass, but it's kind of a little hard to track. There's no like chyrons with any kind of dates or years or anything on that like that. But essentially, it's the sort of patriarch of this whole plot is played by Robert De Niro. And then his nephew, played by Leonardo DiCaprio, comes in post-war, and ends up developing a relationship and marrying Lily Gladstone's character, and then sort of De Niro becomes the sort of puppet master who has kind of endeared himself to the Osage Nation. They trust him. And meanwhile, he's kind of pulling all the strings, and then having other people do his dirty work, plotting to take down these families. And essentially, Lily Gladstone's character of Molly is the one who is sort of like the biggest victim in the context of this movie, where she starts losing a lot of family members to murders, and so that's the story. And I think. For me, I think the movie is really grounded with a lot of really fantastic acting, and I think the performances are the best part of the movie. I think this is the best stuff that Robert De Niro has done in a really long time. I think he is fantastic. He toes that line of being like really really likable and really on the outside, but like in the inside being like truly evil, and creating that balance between someone who projects something that they're not, and then the audience gets to see how he really is versus how he is towards the Osage community, but also later on in the movie when it becomes a little bit more about finding justice. DiCaprio is good as always. I can't really remember the last time I saw like a phoned in DiCaprio performance, but
it has to have been like like some of that post-Titanic stuff,
Sure.
like Man in the Iron Man, just stuff where it was like trying to capitalize on his heartthrob status. But I think,
Yeah.
I think since then he's been on. I think, I think like stuff like The Revenant he won the Oscar for, which I think was a little more of a lifetime achievement award than anything. But like I loved him in. I mean, he's great, and I really loved him in Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. It just is totally he just got like surpassed by Brad Pitt in that movie. So
Yeah. Well, and he's amazing in like Wolf of Wall Street too, which is
that's
a fantastic performance.
another one. Part of this Scorsese thing where people sort of misinterpret the intentions behind it. And anyway.
And then beyond that, Lily Gladstone is really fantastic in a role that I had been reading a lot about how her role in screen time is limited, but I actually didn't feel that way. I felt like she was she had a really big and present role, and she's sort of like the soul behind the entire movie. And like a lot of Scorsese movies, I think it's mostly really well told. It's very long, like it's 3 hours and 27 minutes. It does flow pretty well, I think. I don't think that it ever feels tedious. I feel like there's a lot of stuff that feels. I mean, if you want to do this story justice, there's a lot of detail that has to go into it. And I feel like it's paced well. I think it's shot really well. I think it looks really nice. And I think it doesn't shy away from the sort of reality of how awful the situation was, how terrible it was, the sort of depths or lengths to which it goes. There's like some really kind of like unsettling stuff that happens, like I think towards like the last third of the movie, where they go into one of the people who was part of it, and like he's talking to like an insurance person.
It's his lawyer.
Okay.
Yeah.
He's talking to his lawyer about like what would happen if. I don't want to give it away because I think the shock of the moment is important there, but you're just like, oh my God, this is dark.
Yeah.
And but real, and I think again, the best part about the movie, aside from the acting, is just the sort of unflinching nature of what you're watching, and it's sometimes not the easiest watch. It's I think designed in many ways to illuminate these things and not shy away from these conversations and ignoring history. And also I think the ending kind of really punctuates the sort of the way of like, having the story be told in a way that feels like you're looking at it through the eyes of the people that it happened to. It's kind of punctuated by an ending. Again, I won't give that part away. I think there are maybe just like a couple of issues that I noticed, one of which is that sort of like, it's hard to tell the passage of time, in one area, suddenly like DiCaprio and Lily Gladstone have kids together, and there's no real, like, it just kind of occurs. And I don't remember them even talking about it or talking about having, like, at one point.
There is one scene, like there's one scene like at a dinner table where, and it becomes like a.
Well, it becomes apparent at that point, but it doesn't. I believe they are, like, the children are already there prior to that, right?
There's one the youngest child. This is a scene with the youngest child, and it's already like pretty deep in the machinations of the plot at that point.
Yeah,
but yeah.
And I think the other thing that I kind of was wrestling with while watching it and then thinking back of it is, like, while it does tell the Osage story, and it does tell it through the lens of like understanding like a really important part of history that people should know and understand and recognize, I don't know that it spends enough of its 3.5 hour runtime looking at things like through the eyes of those people. Specifically, I kind of wonder if at times Lily Gladstone's character, we see a lot happen to her, but we don't get a big sense of what she's feeling, or looking at the perspective of from the Osage, like what made them vulnerable in those times, or like, you get a little bit of like where they have meetings and they start talking about suspecting about what's going on, but like, I would have loved to know more about like what was going on through the minds of the Osage people as they were watching this happen, or the development of their relationships with people, or if they suspected any of this stuff, or, you know, and maybe that was the intention, is that maybe there was like, you know, like language barriers or communication barriers between, you know, the like maybe like the Osage women and the people that they were marrying. But I feel like that is like a chunk I felt was missing, was like the actual voice, because, you know, most of the communication that's going on is via DiCaprio and De Niro and all of that. So you're getting, you know, the audience is seeing the sort of plotting that's happening behind the scenes. But I do wish there was more from the Osage perspective on you know, reflecting upon what was going on in that moment. And like again, Lily Gladstone's character has a bit of a moment where she starts to put everything together, and she does react and respond at that point, but there's like a, you know, from like her marriage to DiCaprio to, you know, when everything, you know, sort of falls apart and settles, where we don't really know what she's thinking. We see her grief, we see what she's going through physically, but I would have liked to see a little bit more about, you know, through her eyes, I guess.
I get it. I do know that this movie, if you've read some about it, it was originally centered on the FBI story.
Okay.
Like the FBI, and the book that it's based on is told from the perspective of the FBI. So that's why originally DiCaprio was supposed to play the part that Jesse Plemons plays.
That's right. I forgot they switched roles.
Yeah, so it's been turned around, and again, I get what you're saying about more insight into the Osage, but, you know, that's Scorsese's thing here, is the kind of the insidiousness of this greed, you know, and that's like obviously a recurring theme with him, and you know, sort of the underbelly of this, you know, of what greed drives people toward. And this is like, I've seen this several times, and it really struck me too, like kind of the ease of this greed, and like just the day-to-day sort of ordinariness of it. You know, I think that's the most shocking thing about it, and it's one of the things that really plays into it really plays up the racist, you know, the racism that's inherent in America, especially in the early 1900s. The idea that you know, these Native Americans were marginalized and stuck on a reservation after having their land taken, and then here they discover oil on the land. So these wolves come in, essentially. There's a lot of coyote metaphors in this movie too. Mm-hmm. And just sort of take back the money slowly through really terrible crimes. And there's a line in the movie, and I can't remember who says it, where one character says they'd be more likely to be convicted of like kicking a dog than killing an Indian, mm-hmm. Which is really kind of the thesis statement of the whole movie, right. I believe. I do understand the desire to see more from the Osage people, but it is a story about kind of the terribleness of these people, and the ease at which, at least back then, I like to think it's a little bit better now. And I'm not trying to sugarcoat anything. At least there's no like blatant murder happening now. Mm-hmm. I don't know. I don't want to get too far into that, because it's still a terrible thing. And like these are terrible people doing terrible things, but the ease at which they do it, and the idea that it's sort of justified on their part, and the ease at which they settle into it and get other people to follow along with it is really striking, and really terrible. Yeah. You know, I do have I didn't quite have the time passage issues that you did. I get where you're coming from. I had to pee a couple times, so maybe it
I made it the whole way, by the way.
Good job. At the screening they gave us free popcorn and soda, which
I went at 10:30 in the morning, so I think maybe I hadn't had anything to drink that morning so far, so I think maybe that helped. The popcorn and soda was a trap. You fell right into that one.
Well, you know, hey, I'll take it. It was a very nice gift from the PR company, and I indulged in it. I had to pee. I think I had to pee like twice. Anyway, whatever. The thing that really struck me though, and that kind of left me feeling a little bit cold to it, was we don't really get any sort of insight into DiCaprio's character. Like he's the main character, and he does, but for all intents and purposes, as it's portrayed on the screen, loves his wife.
Right.
But he's doing these awful things in the name of, like, at the behest of his uncle, and it's literally killing her family, and
her.
And her at one point in the film. And I feel like there's not enough insight into his psyche as to what he's doing. Like, he's portrayed as a very dumb man. Like,
well, I think that there's not a lot of insight into psyches all around. I mean, I think maybe that's kind of the sort of where I'm coming from with like the Osage perspective, and also the perspective of Lily Gladstone's character is like, there's a lot of there's a lot of seeing what's going on without like peeking behind.
Well, I think you get a lot of motivation from you get the motivation behind De Niro's character, the King Hale. You don't really, like I said, you get from everything that's on screen and everything that's portrayed, you get the very real idea that DiCaprio is in love with his wife.
Mm-hmm.
But for some reason he has this duty to his uncle that runs contrary to that. Like it's in direct conflict to what he's, what he's portrayed as loving his wife. I guess the one thing that kind of maybe makes that murkier is that he's portrayed as being very dumb, like a very simple man.
Yeah.
Whether that's the reason behind this choice or not, I don't know. I just felt it made it a little too obtuse for me for DiCaprio. I think that character is kind of left, like, you don't really understand his motivation, I guess is what I mean. And maybe that's the point. Maybe I'm missing the point. Maybe that's the point, is that is just fucking greed, and that was it.
Yeah, or I mean the point that a man who seemingly loves his wife still did all this shit,
But why is the question? Right. Ultimately, why? And other than he's kind of stupid.
Well, and I think that also plays into the manipulation of him.
Yeah, like, I mean, De Niro is the mastermind here.
Because I think there is a little bit of complexity to DiCaprio's performance, because at times you can see him not totally on board with what he's being asked or told to do. Like, you can see a hint of like hesitation or uncertainty. You especially see it after one of the murders that happens, like, that's down the street from him, if you remember, like, just sort of, he fully set that up. Yeah, yeah. You see his reaction to it, and like, you can see that, but that's about the most that you get, and that's really not informative beyond the idea that he was conflicted in some way.
Yeah, and then later, further on in the film, there's another moment where he's shockingly stupid. Yeah. There's a scene with De Niro's character where he's does like the dumbest, like everybody in this theater laughed at the stupidity of it. I feel like that's maybe a little bit of a knock to it. I don't think it derails the movie at all or anything, but it just feels a little too closed off for me. But like, I agree, De Niro's great in this movie. It's the most engaged he's been. I liked The Irishman too. That was done in by I think the real complaint that people have is the kind of distracting de-aging that happened in there. Like, I think it really hamstrings the movie at a certain point. But yeah, I otherwise I thoroughly enjoyed it. Anyway, what's your grade for Killers of the Flower Moon, Cody?
So I'm going to give it a really strong B+. I don't know that it quite crosses that A- threshold. I reserve the right to change my mind on that after thinking about it a little bit more. But, I think that the technical aspects are there. The story is really important, and it's unflinching, and I really appreciate the sort of unflinching nature of it. And I think that the performances are fantastic. I think that DiCaprio, De Niro, and Gladstone will all get nominated for their performances, and yeah, it's really, really solid.
A- for me. I think I agree with everything you said. I think that it's really, really solid, really, really, um, shocking. It also mentions the Tulsa race massacre too, to kind of drive home the terrible, terrible shit that's been done in the name of greed. Also in Oklahoma. It has a kind of one of the more like surprising endings, I think, just in the way it's constructed. And then, the kind of the story of what happened to everybody afterwards is just sort of like, white people win again.
Yeah.
Sorry, everyone we've destroyed. That's not I'm not sincerely apologizing. That's just terrible guilt.
Of course.
Anyway, so this is in theaters now. It is an Apple TV co-production, so presumably at one point it will be streaming on Apple TV Plus.
It will be. They have not announced a date for which it will hit Apple TV Plus, but it will be there. I have to imagine somewhere around the holidays.
Yeah,
this is
going to be something you can watch Christmas on your Apple TV. Probably a really early front runner. That and Oppenheimer for like Best Picture of the year. I don't know if there's going to be a lot of competition this year. I don't know what studios are pushing and what they're not. So
we'll see. Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I think De Niro and DiCaprio for sure get nominations. I would be surprised if Gladstone didn't. I mean, this might be De Niro's to lose, at least at this point.
He's really, really good in this part.
Yeah,
which is great to see. I mean, it's great to see De Niro engaged again after so much bullshit that he's done the past 15 years.
I mean, he's done good stuff here and there. I mean, I do believe the last movie he was released he was in was the Sebastian Maniscalco movie that I didn't see,
about my father or whatever,
which probably wasn't super good or anything. All right, that's gonna do it for this week. Next week, anything happening? I have nothing on my calendar.
Yeah, so there's a couple of things that are releases that we can watch at home that we'll probably review. So Five Nights at Freddy's is out.
Oh yeah, I forgot that was hitting Peacock also.
Yeah, it's day and date, theaters and Peacock. And then there's a movie that I saw at Fantastic Fest that's getting great reviews that is released on Shudder on Friday called When Evil Lurks. And that's another one I'd like to cover. It's in the thick of spooky season, so I figure maybe a couple of horror movies would be nice.
I'm really surprised that the Five Nights at Freddy's is hitting Peacock also. I'm familiar with what it's based on. Obviously, the Showbiz, Chuck E. Cheese, animatronics. I was surprised to find out it was hitting Peacock day and date, but curious.
It's a little concerning, I'll say. But I mean, I'm on its Wikipedia page and it says its early box office projections place it to 33 to 42 million in its opening weekend. So who knows?
Maybe that just speaks to how many people don't have Peacock.
That is true. Yeah.
I mean, I don't know. We have it. I don't remember the last time I watched a movie there.
Yeah.
Mostly it's for The Office and
Office Superfan Cut.
When I fall asleep during SNL and I wanted to see Weekend Update. Yeah. Since they took it off of Hulu, god damn it.
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
Yeah. All right. If you want to reach us, you can email us at podcast@cinesnob.net. You can find us on Twitter @cinesnob, Facebook cinesnobnet, youtube.com/cinesnob. Cody, have you been on the ramble recently?
Not recently. It's still going on, so people can check that out. And I pop on when I can. It's a little bit of busy season. I've been traveling a lot, so it's been hard to do that. Plus, it's playoff season. You gad about. Yeah.
Oh yeah. Spurs. Regular season. Well, NBA season starts
Tuesday.
Week.
Spurs are on Wednesday. Yeah.
Yeah. At Dallas. We were talking how I haven't paid attention really since I had cable, and how hard it is now just doing the streaming stuff to piece together a decent way to watch this.
Yeah.
Legally. I may have to go to a bar every now and then.
Ooh,
so
fancy. Have yourself a Shirley Temple. And
yeah, I was talking to my wife about this. This is just a funny story about the proliferation of digital cable. So like in the mid 2000s when the Spurs, that had that run 2003, 2005, 2007, I would go to this specific bar over by Ingram Park Mall. I don't know if it's still there, and I don't remember the name of the bar. With my friends, and we'd watch the Spurs games. This was right when digital cable was starting to spread. And I don't know if you know, like there's a little bit of a lag on digital cable. So like literally half of the bar was on regular cable and the other half was on digital. And the half that was on regular old analog cable got the reaction like a good 5 seconds sooner.
Yeah.
And so that half of the bar would cheer or boo or whatever, and the other half would be like, what the fuck happened?
That would drive me absolutely insane.
It sucked. It was really terrible. Though when I did work at the TV station at WOAI, we had a fiber feed directly from what is now the Frost Bank Center, because we would do live shots there. Every TV station had that. And when it wasn't live for our reporter, it was just the Jumbotron or the whatever they call it, the Lighthouse feed.
Yeah.
So we could watch, and that was even faster than cable. So we'd be watching that. And I remember one of my buddies at the station, he would get mad because it didn't have like the announcers or anything. It was just the raw feed. He didn't like watching that because he wanted the analysis, and so we'd have to watch the cable version. But you could like see it up in the corner in one of the monitors.
On NBA League Pass during commercials, they show the Jumbotron feed.
Oh, really?
If you have League Pass, yeah. So like before the game and then during commercials, you're watching the Jumbotron stuff.
I remember watching the old pay-per-views back in the day. Pay-per-view of it was like a Spurs Jazz like round 1 game that I had to pay for. My dad let me get it. And they showed like the same Diamond Shamrock commercial like twice in every fucking break.
Yeah.
Like, why am I paying for this? Why am I getting commercials? Anyway. All right. Looking forward to that. Wemby looks good.
Should be a fun season.
Yeah. If you want to, we already said that. Anything else before we go?
No, I think we're good.
All right. On that note, I'm Jerrod Kingery.
I'm Cody Villafana.
Thank you for listening to the CineSnob Podcast. To read reviews, interviews, and more, visit cinesnob.net. See you next week.